Had read that parking lot lease and probably 20. Legal lease.
You all set? All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order for December 7th, 2022. It's 6:04. Sorry about the lateness. We had some technical difficulties. I'd like to open it up for public comments for items not on the agenda for discussion, not action. Lively group tonight. Town report. We'll go to the town administrator.
All right, a few things on the initial report and then a slew of things that got added since then. So the first thing is the audit. I did hear back a couple weeks ago from our auditors. They were in their final steps of finishing the audit. I did get an email from them yesterday requesting a couple more things to finalize it. I have not had a chance to pull those documents. But I anticipate in the next week or two, we'll have our fiscal year 21 audit done. So, yay. Fiscal year 2022, still ongoing things with the school that we had to finalize with some grants and things like that. So I haven't even uploaded that information, which I was a little worried about until Marjorie said that she hasn't even done 22 for Vinyl Haven yet. So that makes me feel better. So we're good at this point, I think, with the audit, if we can get the 21 in soon. So any questions about that?
Carol?
What is the schedule, do you think, on the 2022 audit?
So the 2022, both of them were, the anticipated goal was to get them done prior to next year's us going to town meeting. And so I don't anticipate that 2022, especially with how long 21 took, for 2022 to be done before, I mean, it could, but I don't think it will, before we start the budget process. But I do think that during the process of us going through the budget, before we go to town meeting for sure, that 22 will be done. I would think a couple months. I mean, it was September when they really started. So it's taken them a couple of months. So I would think with a couple of months of the 22nd should be quicker than the 21st was. I'm hopeful we'll have it in a couple months.
And is the audit is partly what helps us identify what our, our undesignated fund balance is that right?
That information is there. Marjorie was able to help us figure out with the work that she did in closing out the last year's, what we have for undesignated fund going into this budget season. So you can get that information without that. It's just good to have that third party documentation to show that what the book stated in fact were.
So the bottom line is it shouldn't impact the fiscal year 24 budget process. We have a number, it's just we're confirming that number.
Yes. The next thing is the aquaculture and the municipal engagement with DMR. So this is something I'm going back to a few meetings ago that Bo communicated as a communication that he received from somebody. Essentially, there's through the NACE grant recognition that Shebig is somebody that's receiving a lot of aquaculture leases and applications, and they want to be involved with the town on the information session about it. There was a meeting held in November where some residents, coastal water members, and Bo attended. The next step is going to be for them to set up an informative session for them to come to the island. So it'll be sometime either Tuesday or Thursday between 6 and 7:30. I did hear back from her this morning saying that when she hears back from DMR with some good dates, they'll throw those back to us and then we can try to schedule. So that's just kind of an FYI. The next is the 2 Board of Adjustment Appeals hearings. The first one, so when I wrote this up, the first one, which is the appeal of shoreline zoning permit for 107 Cottage Road. They had a hearing on November 3rd. The decision was not made. It was postponed to December 1st. At that point, a decision was made. I did just receive the signed copy of the findings and facts, so I can share those with the selectmen. We did receive in a letter, which all of the selectmen were attached to, from the other attorney about requesting a stop work order. I met with the town attorney to try to get an understanding of the logistics, because there's two different appeals happening. One, which is with the court, which the Board of Adjustment Appeals or the town really doesn't have a lot of grounds to stop any kind of work order at this point. And then the other one was shoreline zoning. And so we needed to, or I needed to, with the code enforcement officer and with the attorney, to try to gather the information that we needed to then have a proper response. And so I did meet with the attorney. I did have the property owners come in and talk to me. And they did notify me, included through email, that they're going to be submitting a request to revisit the decision. I've also received an additional email from another property owner, and then this afternoon received one from our code enforcement officer. So this particular appeal is going to be, I have to notify the Board of Adjustment Appeals tomorrow to see, based on the information that they've received, if they want to hear it again or look at any new information. But there is request from a number of people to reconsider their decision. So, yes.
So did the stop work order get issued?
The stop work order did not get issued because there is the question of a big majority portion of the house not being within that 250-foot mark of the shoreline zoning. And so because this appeal was specific on the shoreline zoning permit, the proper thing that needs to be done is to determine how much of the house is within that shoreline zoning. And that work order could only be done in that portion.
Respectfully, I don't agree with that. The permit for the construction was specifically issued as a shoreline zoning permit. And as long as that permit is under all the questions that it's under, with the decision that was made by the Board of Appeals and all the other requests, it would seem prudent to stop work until the questions are resolved. Regardless of how much of it is in the shoreline zone or not, the fact remains that it was permitted as a shoreline zone.
I mean, I've met with the town attorney and I'm following the direction to try to make sure that we're taking the proper steps. So I took the advice of the town attorney to make sure that proper information was received before that decision could be made. So
I would ask that we talk about this further with the appropriate time. Okay.
any other questions on that one?
Oh, here.
Yeah, I just want to be sure I understood. So subsequent to the stop work order, you received you said, you met with the property owners? You did as the town administrator?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of that meeting?
What they wanted to do was walk through to show from their perspective where everything was and provide any additional information to just let the town know what they have in front of them, which.
Okay. And was the code enforcement officer there too?
Mhm.
And the town attorney?
No.
And then you said that you received some requests, to reconsider to reconsider the decision from the Board of Appeals. So besides the code enforcement officer?
I received an email on Monday from Don Boxbaum, and then I received an email today this morning from the property owner letting us know that, tomorrow the information will be submitted.
What information?
That he's gonna submit, written information to reconsider the, for Board of Adjustment Appeals decision.
So he's going to request a reconsideration.
Yes, so he'll be the third person requesting that.
I just have a question. Once a stop order request comes in, what is this board's responsibility?
According to the town attorney, this board's responsibility is, it's not the board's responsibility, and according to the town attorney, the town attorney that CC'd all of the select board, there was no requirement for him to CC the select board. He did that specifically so there would be more of talk to process it and proceed it, and that the work order could be acknowledged, but it is not required to follow their request.
It's specific in the zoning ordinance. There's a specific language that dictates what happens after the Board of Appeals denies or accepts an appeal.
So my
That's very
suggestion would be,
specific language.
if there
That
are,
very specific language dictates that the code officer and the municipal officers determine the next steps. Not the town administrator, not the town attorney. The municipal officers who are elected and appointed officials.
I understand that.
Well,
And
we're not doing that.
Because I'm still receiving information, and the expectation that I feel at this point is that I'm not allowed to either gather all the information before I can present it to you.
If you read the language in the ordinance, I think you'll see, as with the attorney, that what the Board of Selectmen should be doing right now is determining next steps. Any further appeals could affect those next steps, but it does not say anywhere in the ordinance, wait until further information comes in before moving forward. It says, once the decision's made, move forward, and we need to be doing that.
Okay, so when is that next step? In between meetings, or when I receive the proper notice and then have the proper time to let you all know? I mean, that's,
No, what you're receiving has nothing to do with the decision that's been made. What you're receiving is information with people who might want to request an appeal. That's separate. The decision has been made. We need to act on that decision. It's in the ordinance. We should be talking about that in tonight's meeting. It's been a week and a half since that decision was made.
they had 7 business days to provide that information as Board of Adjustment and Appeals to me, and it just got signed by the secretary. So I just recently received that information.
That's information relative to an appeal. That has nothing to do with the decision that's been made.
No, she's talking about the findings.
I'm talking about the findings and
Oh, okay.
facts.
I thought you were talking about the appeal.
No, it's, the decision was made, but the board has 7 days to provide the findings and facts signed and documented to the town office.
Right.
And we just received that.
Okay.
I request from the property owners to provide that information before we even have it. So I fully understand that the meeting took place a week and a half ago, but there's still a process that
Yeah,
happens that they're
Yeah.
required to,
Yeah.
and
I thought you were referring to the other documents. that
no,
were coming
I
in.
just received the signed document from them, and
From
this
the
whole
Board of
meeting was
Appeals.
already put together when that happened. And so I put the information about this particular hearing on here purely out of need to know basis, because I knew it was gonna come up as a question. It's not that I'm keeping information, just like with the appeal for the next one, in terms of the Dowdies and the Fowler, that appeal was done. The findings and facts was provided to us. When it was provided to us, we had already discussed, I had discussed with Bo what was going to be on the agenda, and looking at the significance of the agenda, made the decision to put it under the TA report, provide you with the findings and facts so you have the information, and make the recommendation that be placed on the next agenda item for a topic of discussion. So that's kind of the process that I was looking to take with the McKee property as well.
When did we receive those findings of fact?
In the packet.
Right.
Yes,
When did we receive it?
This says dated November 17th. I would have to look back to see when I received the email, and then I had to wait for them to come in, and that took multiple days for them to sign, and before the official signed document was multiple days after the initial emails were received.
So it was in the packet, but we made the decision to place it on a subsequent agenda, not tonight,
Yes,
the Dowdy.
yes.
And we decided that the theft of road signs and the Blanchard lot agreement were more timely than implementing the decision of the Board of Appeals on the Dowdy thing.
You know, at some point you have to prioritize certain things, and if things come on first come basis, there are certain things that I'm trying to do the best that I can to prioritize all of the work that's happening under the umbrella of the municipalities right now. So I was trying to be fair to get through some of the business that was already taking place and allow this decision to have its own agenda item when we didn't have 2 hours worth of discussions already that had been waiting to take place.
So it's my decision to hold off on it. Since there's no time frame on us having to look at it. We didn't have the McKee one, so.
Right.
That wasn't even in the talk.
Got it, I understand it now. Yeah.
So I was gonna talk to you guys about if we wanted to do a separate meeting completely to just address either one or both of these at the same time.
Okay, so I want to go on record saying, I think it's incumbent upon us to follow up on things like, in particular, the Dowdy issue, which we did have the paperwork for in time for it to be in the packet, as soon as we can possibly begin moving forward. And I would have really appreciated that being on tonight's agenda, as opposed to some of these other items that do not appear to me to have the community sensitivity that one has.
Any other comments?
In terms of the Dowdy appeal, in talking with the town attorney, there was the question to see if the board is interested in holding an executive session on either the 13th or the 20th to go over what the board's legal rights and responsibilities are about what they should be doing with this findings of facts and what the next steps are. So that's a decision for you to make. If not, then you could just go straight into, figuring out what you want to do with this.
So now's the time to talk. When would you guys like to do a meeting?
The 13th. Yep, and the 20th are both okay with me.
So you want to have,
No, I'm not finished. I would suggest that we ask our attorney for a written opinion as to what she thinks we should be working on, but that we do not need her to attend. We can have the executive session and work it out ourselves. That would be a motion. I would move that we ask the attorney for her written opinion as to what our next steps are, and that she submit that in writing before we have an executive session on either the 13th or the 20th. And that the board meet in executive session to decide those next steps at that time.
So
We
as
don't
far,
need her present.
as far as the 13th and 20th, it's only because of her
Oh,
to be present. So we can do it the 14th, we can do it whenever.
and the code enforcement officer did say that he can and will be able to attend if needed as well.
Someone needs to second that motion.
and I would amend it to say the code officer should be at that meeting, according to the ordinance.
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion on that motion? Yes, Mark?
Did you say that we will just be working with an opinion or direction from our attorney, but she will not be present today?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Do you have a different opinion?
No.
Any
Being
other
clear
thing?
on what his-
I'm sorry.
Just being clear on what his motion and intention was.
All right. Any other questions? Karen?
I guess I feel like there's a lot going on behind the scenes that the board is not privy to, and I'm wondering what the communication process, I mean, this sort of relates to Bob's motion in that I kind of don't know how I'm supposed to stay abreast of what's happening when the communication is with the town administrator and the town attorney. So is there a process that you summarize those conversations for the board?
That's why the town attorney offered to have an executive session so that conversation could take place. Because the decision that the selectmen are making are based on these findings of facts on the information in here. So she offered a chance to meet with her so you can ask all those questions and figure out what the.
That's not really what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I don't totally feel like I understand all the conversations that have even happened prior. So just meeting with the town attorney, I guess it's maybe not a conversation for now. But I feel like we need to have a conversation about this process because I feel very uninformed and ill-equipped to kind of make a decision. I did attend the Board of Appeals hearing, so I have some sense of attending those hearings, but I think it's maybe a discussion for another time. But I would like to have that discussion.
Any conversations I have with the town attorneys take place through email, and you are open to having any of those email communications. But there hasn't been any since you all requested to be CC'd on the communications. And it's scheduled a phone discussion with her to determine what are the next steps. What do we as a town need to do going forward after the last meeting, knowing that these two were coming in front of us. So there hasn't been any other ones.
All right, so do you want to create a meeting either 13th or 14th, depending on which day the code officer can meet with us? Well, this schedule, so I can't talk for him. And then be solely executive session to
Yes,
discuss both the, our next steps.
that was mine.
And then what do we do after that? We come out of that meeting and go straight to action, or do we
Well, it depends on what
postpone everything till the next meeting and have a discussion in the public?
I don't.
I'm just looking for a
No,
sense of direction.
we cannot make decisions in executive session.
Correct.
Right, so we would have the discussion in executive session, let's say on the 13th or 14th, whichever works best for his schedule. And then we would have that be an agenda item on the meeting of the 21st.
You can hold a special meeting, and once you come out of an executive session, have a discussion. That is, as long as it's advertised in the proper manner.
Is 6 days enough? Is 6 days long enough for?
To advertise? Yes. No, what she's saying is we can have executive session
I understand,
and then after have a regular meeting.
I understand. And
But
I'm-
my thoughts are, I think some of the public might want to be here.
Yep.
So postponing it, or not postponing, but putting it on the 21st meeting would be better.
I was actually going to suggest a little bit different. I was going to say, let's have our executive session on the 13th, followed by a meeting devoted to that conversation on the 13th, just to keep it moving, because we have so many agenda items we have to deal with. Why not go ahead and get it moving then? So have our executive session and then have a public meeting on the 13th immediately after. And the only agenda item would be these, either this or these two Board of Appeals issues.
Okay? Mark?
As long as it's advertised accurately,
Yeah, we just need 3
and
days.
there may be a situation where it's not ready or appropriate to take action that night. So you look at none of that. Just be prepared.
I will double check with, these dates were around the town attorney schedule, so I'll have to, I texted Jim, so I'll have to double check and, get back to you. I know he's gonna be traveling to California at some point next week, so, I'll see if that date works for him, because that was a town attorney date.
Well, be an executive session so you can be present as soon as possible.
Yep. So does that, you get all that in the the motion.
All right, any other comments? All right, you go with it? All right, all in favor? All right. Moving on.
The next one is town floats. They were supposed to be removed Monday, they weren't. So I don't know if you want to, I mean, I sent a few emails with my opinion on it. I don't know if you want to start with that, or if you want to have a discussion about it and then hear my opinion afterwards.
Bob,
Can anybody speak to what are the safety issues as they relate to the magnitude of the tides relative to removal of the slopes?
meaning,
There was reference that we had to do it at a particular point in time because of the tides and upcoming weather. And I just wondered, do we have to have 10 feet of water to safely pull them out? Or is it 9.5 feet? Is it 11 feet? What is the specific, that comment was rather general. What is the specific nature of the tide that's required to safely pull the slopes?
a tide during the day, or crew shows up.
They look at the highest tide in the month.
Okay, those are two different things. The highest tide in a month and high tide during the day are two different things. I'm looking for more specificity. Do we know? Okay, so I know work that we do with high tides, there's work that we do that is much easier with 10 foot than it is with 8 foot, but 9 foot's probably okay. So I'm just looking for guidance on that as we try to come up with a reasonable approach to when these get pulled.
I can get an answer for you.
High tides during the day is every other week. And the weather forecast is pretty reliable 10 days out in terms of major storms or ridiculously cold temperatures and that kind of thing. So if it's just daytime high tide of a normal variety, then that says one thing. If it has to be at least 10 feet of water during the day, that says something different.
Right, you guys want to go with comment first and then listen to what Jason says, or you want
I guess we can, I just to hear from Vika first, then, because I'm not sure if it's different than what was in the memo.
The memo was written up before this discussion started through a slew of emails. So there were a number of emails received from fishermen in particular requesting that it would be reconsidered. And through discussion with Public Works and Bo, the decision I made was to keep the commercial floats in and then the float in front of CTC. But there was big support with the selectmen going against that decision. I recognize the importance of wanting these floats to be in, and I understand that the weather has been good. The frustration that I'm experiencing at this point, and I believe that Public Works is too, is that this is something that happens every year. A couple of meetings ago, I did mention that Public Works was preparing to pull floats out at the beginning of December. When those dates would come, we would advertise. And it just seems like when it started advertising, work was planned, the selectmen revolved, the Public Works revolved their schedule to do this according to a policy that sits at place, according to when the weather was nice, according to, everything that's set in place. And then their decision wasn't heard, wasn't valued, and a decision was made through a chain of emails, not in a public meeting, to go against the policy and against what the recommendation of the town administrator in support of the chair and the recommendation of the Public Works was. I don't disagree with them being in. I disagree with the process that went into it. And I think that in this particular situation, I would have been happy to see some accommodation be made where they let the Public Works do the job that they wanted to do and then work somewhere with a happy medium and then going forward change the policy. But that's obviously not that's what transpired. And so I just wanted to, just say that, if we want to change the policy, I think that it's time that the policy be changed, because I think that it's unfair for the public works to have to experience this, year in and year out, so.
All right, so wait a minute. I'll open it up to the floor and then we'll do final. That's all right?
Yeah, I guess, so my question is pretty basic, and it might help inform the rest of the discussion. What is the policy, and is it a written policy?
It is a written policy, and I can read it to you if you want. I did, Justin had told me that, it's not working on the website, which we need somebody to help us with the website, because at this point, we're overwhelmed with these kind of things. So the policy is that, the town of Big Island recognizes the importance of supporting its commercial fishermen and marine economy, as well as recreational boaters and ferry commuters. The town of Big Island also recognizes the stone wharf as a shared resource that is heavily used and important to the town. The policy establishes guidelines for the town in placing and removing the seasonal floats at the stone wharf to provide a balance between protecting the town's investment in the floats and the convenience of the users. Under definition, seasonal floats, the seasonal floats are those floats that the town administrator determines will be removed during winter months to protect them from damage and unnecessary wear and tear. Enactment, the policy is enacted upon the majority vote of the Board of Selectmen and may be amended or repealed from time to time by selectmen or town meeting. Policy, the Harbor Master and Public Works Department shall place seasonal floats in the water anytime after April 1st, when the weather and good forecast allows. The Harbor Master and Public Works shall remove seasonal floats from the water approximately December 1st of each year. If weather forecast and inclement weather warrants removal earlier, it shall be done only after 5 days' notice to the fishermen and boat owners by posting a notice of the removal date in the same manner as required for posting town meetings. Any boaters remaining tied to float after proper notice shall be removed by the harbor master, consistent with the authority granted in the coastal waters ordinance. So I feel like as the town crew, town administrator, we were trying to find a policy. When people provided an email, I tried being accommodating, and the decision was made outside of a town meeting by a majority of the selectmen to go forth with what the public wanted versus supporting in any way the town administrator's decision or what the public works wanted to do. Which, going back, I don't disagree that they should stay in. I disagree with the way the process was laid out and the fact that we as employees were not respected in some ways in terms of following the policy that is at hand. So.
Anybody in the public got a comment? Rob?
So we have this conversation almost every single year, over and over. We've had meetings and we've talked about it. People have come and asked to have this change, just like we're talking about. Nothing's been done. And I mean, it's been a lot of years we've talked about this. Warming weather, the weather's balanced longer into the year, it's 50 degrees there. I think it's time to address that so we can avoid conflicts like this.
I agree.
I don't know that a certain date is really probably the best way. I think, we can look out 5 days, like somebody said, and it only takes a day to haul those floats out, and you can do it that way. But it's very frustrating because it's the same conversation over and over, and it makes it hard for a lot of people on the island. Not a lot, but a bunch of people on the island. And in the past, when we were part of Cumberland, there were years, and I don't agree with it, some floats, one or two floats were left in all winter. So we have done it both ways. But
I'll speak to around, mention this last time I came, I really don't, it's not a necessary thing for me, like, I don't commute like he does. But I do use it, I obviously use it all winter, But, yeah, there are people that do, and I brought it, for instance, I don't know, he just, they take him out, he's moved, or, that's like me, and my boat's hauled out in the yard, if you're taking off or whatever. But it's too bad they would speak up, because he puts a haul off up, actually, because he, goes, his boat's important. And I don't think that's legal, as far as outlets from every ordinance we have, so I don't know if he knows that or not, but.
It's specifically laid out in one of the drawings where you can have them and where you can't, so. but-
So you actually can have them on
No,
there? Okay.
that's a whole nother
So,
conversation.
well, I'm asking because, you know, I was going, but I did, and was told to take it out, so I did, so it is kind of paralyzing to not have any options, frankly, but, for me personally, you know, I'm speaking for other people who are myself, I would use it, what was in there, but I know other people who use it anyway. That's my input.
One of the things that I did say through the emails, I think that the town has reached a point where potentially with the budget season, a discussion needs to be had about another permanent float that isn't gonna come out, that could accommodate the fishermen like Alex who use it year round. So,
Any other comments?
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't we just leave our existing floats in versus buy a new one? You know, if we're all close to protect them, why would we buy a new system? to leave in our winter?
from what I've been told, the floats that are in and have been in need routine annual maintenance to them. And that they're not built to support to be in year round. So I'm not saying that you would need to buy new ones, I think that the discussion should be had about having not just seasonal floats, but floats that stay in year round, that are written in the policy rather than, you know, the commercial float, the CTC float. So to accommodate the tie-ups.
And then, so, changing of a policy does not need to go to town meeting, is that correct?
Changing of a policy could be done by selectmen, correct?
Any other comments? Okay,
Well, then I'd like to make a motion that we ask the Coastal Waters Committee to recommend changes to the float-related ordinances with the selectmen. Put that on their agenda for the December 21st.
any discussion, Mark?
I was on the board when this policy was enacted, and I specifically remember saying to one or two of the members that were present at the time, although I think this policy has good intentions, it's going to have some road bumps if you start or have an open winter, or if you have a very icy winter. It has good intentions to haul them up before they get damaged by ice. But we leave floats in this town all over the place. We have permanent float, the CTC berths that, which is a much bigger float. We have a float at Cousins Island, which is a much bigger float. We have the commercial floats, which are exactly the same floats that we're talking about hauling off. And we have 3 at Chandler's, which are exactly the same size as the ones that people are so worried about getting out of the water. One of them right now, the one that the ramp landing on in Chandler, needs some attention. It's starting to sag, it's starting to drop. It could be just growth on the back float tank, but it needs to be hauled out and maintained, which I've already pointed out. So I don't see the big risk. I think Ralph hit it right on the head. I think it's as simple as this board revisiting that policy and either doing away with it and coming up with another one with some input from people like Fishermen and Coastal Waters Committee, or not having a policy and just seeing how it goes. I personally think most winters now, moving forward, that one float with the ranch is staying all winter. I didn't even know that you need to haul much of that system out. The big risk is when they get locked in with ice, you're certainly not going to unhook anything, and they could get crushed. But it would take quite a bit of ice to crush these floats. Used to crush the old plywood sided floats. I think it's more simple than these right?
Karen?
I mean, I absolutely agree with what Mark is saying, and maybe I don't understand the process, maybe it can just be the selectmen. I personally think perhaps we should just eliminate that portion of the ordinance, but what is the proper process? Should it, should it go through coastal waters and we should get the recommendation, or can the selectmen just decide?
Either way. Either way, I don't think there's I mean, as far as I know, we can change the policy. We don't need to ask anybody to change the policy.
Okay, then I withdraw my motion.
The one thing to keep in mind, we do have the rules and regulation with the picture where it shows the different ones and it has them labeled and it shows them, rental or annual ones. And so that might need to be changed simultaneously to accommodate if you change any policies.
But is that one on, that's in the ordinance, right?
This is under the ordinance and it's with the rules and the regulations, coastal waters rules and regulations.
So that's a policy, not an ordinance.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
what I'm just saying is if you're gonna, we have the stone work policy and then we have the coastal waters rules and regulations where the information intertwines. So I'm just saying, be mindful that if you do change the policy with something like either eliminating or keeping one in permanently, the rules and regs would need to be adjusted too. So in that case, it might be wise to bring it to the coastal waters to have their input since it is a coastal waters rules and
But
regulations.
its rules and regulations need to be changed by town meeting.
It's a policy.
You had a question? Comment?
I'm good now, thank you.
Okay. All right, Carol.
I didn't hear Justin's response because I'm confused. Are these ordinances or rules? Who's responsible? So the Coastal Waters Committee has a set of
Rules and regulations.
Yes.
Yeah, there's an ordinance and then there's rules and regulations. We can recommend to you to change the rules and regulations without going to town meeting. And there is some overlap.
Yeah, rules and regulations and policies do not require town meeting to change.
So I guess I'd like to, through my motion, I'd like to make a new motion that we put it on the agenda for the December 21st meeting. And I'm happy to come forward with, that could be in the packet after consulting with Coastal Waters with a suggestion for a change to the, what is it called?
Seasonal float system
Seasonal
policy.
float policy.
So we don't need a.
Hold on.
We don't need a motion? Okay, no motion.
Future.
If you're asking it to be a future agenda item, it's just a future agenda item. I think the one decision making factor now is to kind of get an idea when the current float systems would.
So do you want, so my question to you, Carol, is do you want coastal waters to look at it?
No,
They give us a
I'm happy to consult with, I think we can consult with them informally, exactly.
Okay. So the question remains at hand, do we follow the current policy? Or do we do away with the policy
Guess
as
we do
it
that
stands?
tonight, right? Go ahead.
Obviously, the floats off for now. Let people use the floats, and if winter creeps in on us and we can't get them hauled, then that's the way it goes. One more thing, if we're worried about working on floats from November 15th to April 15th or March 15th, which can be the worst time of the year to try to work on a float outdoors at times, then I would encourage the Public Works Department to clear some equipment out of the garage enough to bring a float inside once in a while and work on them inside. That's what people do. They bring them inside buildings and they really do work on them in a controlled environment where you get something done.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Just, just got it. So you put public works in danger when there's a problem with the flow, potentially, right? There's bad weather coming, or there's bad weather here already. And then you just put them in harm's way. They'll take care of it. That's the way I look at it, in my opinion. Elaborate, please.
Who's putting them in danger?
The community. Because you decided to leave the floats in, and then bad weather comes, all of a sudden we need to yank them out and maintain
That's
them.
not what I said.
Well,
I
that's
said
the
we
way I-
can leave them in all winter as far as I'm concerned. I think you must. have
Okay,
missed that
and when they
part.
get destroyed, who pays for that? We pay for that.
That's right.
Yeah,
the
that's
risk-
great.
That's the risk that you take,
Well,
setting
then,
off and maintaining
Whatever.
a marine infrastructure.
well, then you leave them in, then I'm as a taxpayer paying, right? Not really happy about that. Paying enough as it is,
It's part of the marine game.
it's not part of the marine game if you take them out in advance, if you're proactive. If you're not proactive, then what are you doing?
Have you ever been down to Chandler's
It
Cove?
doesn't matter where I've been or where I've not been. It's common sense.
I'm gonna suggest that the employee is out of line with the town.
I'm not an employee. I'm a taxpayer.
You're not
All
an
right.
employee.
Hold on.
I'm a taxpayer at
This
this
is,
point.
this is completely inappropriate. This is over the line.
But Bob, can I just please to calm down? Hold on, Bob. We had a couple hands up. Ralph?
I just want to point out the fact that nobody's getting put in harm's way. Nobody's gonna be taking floats out on a bad day. As we said, you can project out quite far ahead of what the weather's gonna be. You know, nobody's going down there when it's blowing 40, all iced up. You can still get them out ahead of time. You look at the 10-day forecast and say, oh, it's gonna drop off 10 below zero. That's all I'm out. It's not, it's really not that hard. I'm a taxpayer too. I don't want to see the folks get beat up. I don't see that happen. It never used to. And we left them in, some land is all, which I don't think we should, but we also used to haul them out before the bad weather. Nobody's getting put in harm's way, and I think everybody has the best interest of the floats and the taxpayers' monies. at the end.
We have other places staying on winter, and they don't get destroyed. We never take them out under any circumstances. Are those being destroyed? And I guarantee that I could predict, I could give you at least 2 weeks of notice before there was ice, because I pay attention to the weather very closely. And it's not that hard. It takes a lot to ice that up, and it's very predictable. It's gonna be very cold for a while, usually followed by a snowstorm. You have weeks of advance notice before that would be iced up to the point where you couldn't get those out. At least 2 weeks.
I'm not afraid to harm way, so I'll gladly do that. Not for long. Free of charge, actually. Like I did the other night when all the cars started closing code, and I kind of left that pull off from under. I have no problem doing that. If it's an issue with like liability, pay me back.
Oh,
It should be done.
All right, Bob.
I just want to add to the point that Ralph made in terms of weather. Even if we have a bad spell, there's always a few days of calm weather in between. So the opportunity to remove them safely, the opportunity to be mindful of both the needs of the public and the safety of our employees, I think is very important. And I just want to point out that in that exchange of emails, I was thinking about both the whole time. I was not ignoring Public Works nor town staff. But I think we need to pay attention to the needs of the public as well. And we need to keep in mind the evolving patterns of weather and climate that are happening right now. So my suggestion in those emails was simply that we wait to make the decision to whether to haul them or not 3 more days. And I don't think that jeopardized policy. If it jeopardized policy at the expense of paying attention to the public, I think that's worth doing.
I just wanted to agree with Bob in that I chimed in and said that, you know, if the meeting had been way out, I had suggested we have a, you know, a special meeting if we had to discuss this, because as Board of Select, you have to listen to all the public, not just a few. And I also would never, ever think that it was important to put, you know, people in harm's way to save a float. The other question that I had was, since it's not the amount of traffic that we usually have down in the Stone Pier, like in the summertime, can we look at what would happen if you just left one float in for everybody, and pulled the rest? Is that a possibility? Is the system configured that way that you could do that? It seemed like it was a pretty logical, easy fix, and that it shouldn't cause a lot of upheaval. And I want to also point out that I don't ever remember having this conversation. I know everybody says we've talked about it year after year. I don't think we said it last year. Either that or I wasn't at the meeting. So there you go.
Just one more suggestion. We have, is it 5 seasonal floats down Stone Pier? Is that right? 7. And we have 3 year-round floats down at Chandler's. Are they the same construction?
Not quite sure.
If we're not able to interchange them, it would seem to make sense to make them interchangeable so that every winter we could enter a period where we pull floats that weren't pulled last year, maintain them, then put them back in the spring. And the next year, pull the ones that stayed in all winter. So that the ones down at Chandler are not being left in for 15 years before they get serviced. And so that we're not pulling all of them down at the Stone Pier. We set up a system, a rotation, so that we're pulling them, maintaining them indoors, as Mark mentioned, on a logical basis.
All right, so my comment is, who's gonna make the decision to pull the floats out? When we're gonna pull the floats out? Aaron,
I suggest, we wait until the meeting on the 21st. I think we can have a revised Stonewall policy in packet, and then we can make a decision on whether we leave 1, 2, or 3 floats in at that time.
well, what I'm asking is, if we go, next meeting we decide, we're gonna leave 3, 4, all of them in, doesn't matter to me. The whole thing is, who's gonna make the decision to pull the floats out?
That should be in the policy.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And maybe it's in consultation with Coastal Water. That's kind of what I would think, is that, we have an email with Coastal Waters, this is what we're gonna do, but I'm not sure we want to specify a date specific or maybe there will be a number of floats. I mean, I think we've spent a lot of time tonight at this meeting. I do agree that it's, at least in my experience, it's come up multiple times. And I think conditions have changed to maybe when that policy was written. So I think we should revisit it, but I think it needs to be on the agenda as, as a agenda item with a revised policy that we can.
I just finished my comment. So the reason that I think I'm in favor of just keeping the policy the way it is, because it gives the town crew a date on when to schedule it. They have a lot of stuff going on, and you can't expect them to drop everything that they have scheduled to do. So the other thing is, you commented on having our infrastructure out there, for, I don't know how many people use it. I'll give it a number of 15, maybe during the winter that would use it. We got, 400 people year round here, they're taxpayers. So we're asking that the rest of the people to pay if those floats get damaged.
Sorry, I'm not a lawyer, I know,
Because of those 15 people. So, and I understand, it's town, and I know a lot of people are paying for it now that don't even use it. But yeah, that's my point.
First, short term, if there are 7 floats down there, why don't we tonight or decide tonight to pull pilot. Would 2 be sufficient for the next month?
Yeah, 2 line up on 5 on that day.
So pull as many of them as we can such that the remaining float or floats line up appropriately on pilots. Decide that tonight, let Public Works pull them when they deem necessary. Second, in terms of a planned date every year, respectfully, Public Works has a lot of things that they don't get to, you don't get to plan when you're gonna plow snow. Things come up, things have to be flexible. We all have that in our work life. But it could make sense, as we discussed at the next meeting, to have a policy that says on December 1st, we pull through. And that leaves 4 lined up. On December 10th or thereabouts, we pull 2 more. That leaves 2 lined up. And we're deciding to leave 2 in for the winter unless big ice is coming. And at the recommendation of coastal waters and consultation with the town administrator, we pull the last 2 before big ice comes. Let's do that the next meeting, but I would propose we decide tonight to pull as many as we can and still leave 2 in such fashion that they line up with the pilots.
Second. On that motion,
Yes, that was a motion. Okay.
All right, any discussion on that motion? All right, all in favor? I had one more comment that I forgot to say. I wonder if Yarmouth goes through this every year and they want to pull their seasonal float
Question. Been on an island,
up.
big difference.
They're about long.
Been on an island. We depend on those floats more than anybody else.
And long doesn't pull theirs. Just saying.
All right,
I'm sorry to say that, but if this continues to be this difficult, then maybe we'll have to revisit who takes care of our floats for us. I just don't see the difficulty. My father and Med Bones used to build floats, put them off, leave them off, haul them up, anything it took to make it happen for the town of Stonewall. They didn't make a big fuss about everything. And I don't think this town should make everything a big problem. I think it's very easy to maintain a flow system. And I'm sorry to say, once in a while, a float gets damaged and you have to repair it. Sometimes you have to replace it. We budget for stuff like that. We try not to be foolish for our infrastructure. We do a pretty decent job at it. And I think we need to stay focused.
all right.
That's the leases report.
So we're all set with this? All right. All right.
Still on the TA report. The next thing is in terms of the abandoned vehicle at Chandler's, Public Works removed it. The town doesn't have any legal right to do anything with the vehicle until the state of Maine issues a title. It was locked, it had flat tire and no keys. It's really of no value to the town other than having legally proper documentation to junk it. So I have the paperwork filled out. We have to pay for the title fee. Once the state approves it, they'll issue us a title, and then a decision would have to be made by the selectmen what they want to do with it.
Jen?
Just a question, there was nothing, no registration, nothing like that in it? I think there was
The
a
person who owns the vehicle is not who it's registered to. There was easily 10 to 15, if not more attempts to call the individual, to contact in every way, no response. So
Is it something that we can send them a bill?
if they weren't responding to the notices, I mean, I can send them a bill, but I don't think that there's gonna be any follow through with it.
We should, though. In your spare time. you-
Yes, but then I would have to sit there and figure out how much to send it, and at this point, I just don't feel like they're gonna respond, so I just, with the amount of time and effort that has gone into figuring out what the legal steps to do with this vehicle, I just, at this point, wanna get the title for selectmen to, figure out what to do with it and have it be off the plate, so. And then not the last thing, was the last thing, the Community Resiliency Partnership Community Action Grant, last week, maybe the week before, we did receive an email. There was also, through the State of Maine Governor's Office of Policy and Innovation, a press release about 50+ towns that were awarded. Town was one of them. We received the full $50,000 that we applied for. There was a press release. I did get notice from New Center 6 about wanting to come out here and do a little story on it. So they'll be out here next week. I think they'll air next Monday. And that's a lot of help, you know, thanks to Carol. She helped me a lot with that, so. Next thing I have is dredging. I got an email from Jordan Macy, who is now our newest person in charge of this. He wants to meet in the next 3 to 4 weeks or so. We're trying to figure out a date to come up with a timeline about what the next process is going to be. So that's something I updated you guys a couple months ago. I figured, let me know I heard from him. We'll have a meeting scheduled. Any questions so far?
Will that be in person or virtual?
No, it'll just be a Zoom meeting. So the next couple of things are kind of just as an FYI, because you'll be hearing about it. In the last 72 hours, we have received 2 applications to go in front of the planning board and one to go in front of coastal waters. The application in front of coastal waters is for a new pier off O'Neill Road. Coastal waters is gonna hear it, make a recommendation to the planning board. We have to do the proper letting the abutters know, having a public hearing and all that. Then it goes to the planning board, same process. The other application was received through an email yesterday on the behalf of the hotel, asking for zoning ordinance changes. So same thing, it's gonna have to go through the planning board. So once it goes through the planning board, then it'll come to the selectmen, but that's something to kind of keep your ears out on. So any questions about that?
Was there any detail about what the hotel was looking for?
There was an attachment, yes, with some pictures about the changes that they're interested in having, so.
Can we get copies of that?
Yep.
Now, the zoning change, is that what they requested before? So they requested the same thing?
Pretty much, yes, they're just going through a firm to do it this time around. They have somebody representing them.
You said 3 things. There was the pier.
Well, there was the pier and the hotel, but the pier is going in front of coastal and in front of planning. Just same paperwork for all 3 pretty much. The last thing I have on the TA report is communication in terms of an email that Mark has sent me about the truck, one of the trucks. Do you want me to touch base on your email, or do you want to ask the question?
Yeah, I can just ask a question. So a year or so ago, we were asked to go look at the frame on the big white International plow truck. So Bo and I went and looked at it. And I think maybe Jen, you and Jay also went over and did a inspection of the facility. And we were told we needed to replace the plow truck, so we replaced the plow truck, and now they're still using the truck. So my question is, what's the deal?
So that is true. The truck wouldn't pass inspection because it had a cracked frame. And so that's why there was the recommendation by the dealership, and then, you know, with Justin at Public Works Group, looking to get a new vehicle. The reason that there was discussion of recommissioning that vehicle, it never happened and hasn't happened. That truck came in as a backup last year when the brand new vehicle broke 2 different times, unexpectedly during the biggest storms that we had. And so even though we went over and it got fixed, Public Works, put the plow on since the vehicle is still there and present as a second option in case if we get some snow. And the brand new one, they're lacking a little confidence in the brand new truck working since they haven't had it for a year and it's broken down twice. So that truck is as a backup. The only reason that the float system was hooked up is because they simply haven't gotten the hitch purchase to put on the new truck to be able to lug the floats with it. So does that kind of,
So are we now keeping the truck or is it gonna go on the list? We have a bunch of vehicles and equipment on that.
we do have a bunch of vehicles. I talked to Chuck today and he's had some people who have provided additional opinions to them stating that they feel like the vehicle could be fixed, the cracked frame, and be inspectable. I would like to see more of a solid professional opinion on that, if that's the case, before, if that happens. At this point, the gray truck is also in terrible shape. And so, they're,
I think we need to put this on a future agenda, and make it a future agenda item and talk about it, and then get rid of the vehicles we need to get rid of, because this is what, the 3rd time we talked about this? So I think let's put it on a future agenda item, get the information, if we can fix that truck, we'll fix it, or sell it, or whatever, but we have other material, other vehicles, that are in poor shape.
Thank
They're
you.
motivated for it, so.
that's everything on the TA report. Any questions before I go into the treasurer's report, or do you guys have any questions about any of the other reports? I did not get the harbor master report in time to make it onto this agenda, so that was not my packet.
We need to go over
Any questions on anything? Jen?
The fire department, are we all squared away with the complications that occurred when they went to use the credit card?
Yeah, they were given the wrong credit card. That was the complication. We had just gotten a brand new credit card, which we applied for, and when they went to training, the old credit card was given to them, so that was the complication.
All right, any other questions? Rob?
So this, I know we got a new credit card, it should all be great now, but this is the 3rd time this has happened. We can't do this. It's just, can we get our own credit card? I mean, we're an actual town, actual fire rescue department. I know quite a lot of fire and rescue chiefs across the state, the country. And virtually every other one of them has their own credit card. We could alleviate this so that nobody has to worry about it. It's just not acceptable. 3rd time, go down to Samoset and stand there for an hour and a half, 2 hours to figure this out. It's a lot to put on volunteers that are going down there, taking up to 5 days out of their lives, taking off time from work and down there and get the training they need to keep their EMS license.
Can I comment to this?
Yeah.
So I've had this conversation with Steve, and I've had this conversation with Beth. I did not have this conversation with you. Us getting a new credit card, that was one of the reasons in mind. We just got the new credit card. I wanted to see how it worked because it has better security features and significantly higher, more than double limit on it. Once we figured out the process of it, I was fully expecting to then add fire department, public works, and other departments to it. So for budgeting purposes, each of those departments had its own credit card under the same umbrella. And the benefit of that is if you're not using it, we closed the limit to it for security purposes. When you're going to Samoset, we increased it to $10,000 if you need it. So that was already in discussion.
Sounds good.
The only question of that is, do we need a policy for
No,
that? All right.
It's a close.
It just, all right. All right, so the treasurer's report, any questions on that? Okay.
Well, yeah, I just have one question on, so the last page of the treasurer's report, which has the capital improvement. Can you just explain 9,000 on the treasurer's report?
so on the treasurer's report, 9,000, which it comes up all the time. These numbers are always in the current budget year, will always stay the same. Unlike other budgets, they will not show what's come in and out of it. This is only going to show what was voted to put into reserve accounts at town meeting. The last page that I provided you from the Child Savings Bank, that is gonna show to-date current numbers about what's in and out of the reserve account.
So that does not include these values which have not been accrued to that account. So in other words, these amounts have not.
They
been-
have, so the second page, those amounts are already, shown within these totals.
So for example, just so I understand, sorry to be so dumb, but the stormwater, 257,000,
Correct.
110,000 of that came from the,
Fiscal year 22, yes.
okay.
Yeah, the only transfer that has not been made, which I wrote on here, is that the school transportation reserve, we need to add $25,000 from the undesignated funds that they voted to transfer in here. So all of the town, $540,000 has already been transferred over into these reserve accounts.
So you have the capital, I mean, do you distinguish between capital improvement accounts, which show up on the 9,000 list, and then you have other reserve accounts on this?
So 9,000 is going to be just the reserve accounts. We have, I guess, give me an example.
Well, like,
Carol, we can go further into this during our budget talks if you want, or you can get clarification on it.
okay, if you don't want me to talk about it now.
I know, well, unless you have a specific, like, why is that number wrong or something.
I was just trying to understand how to interpret the report. So I'll take it up with Vika at another time.
All right. All right, any other questions for Rika?
The only thing that I want to mention on this, so we're reconciled through the end of October. I don't know if you read it, there are 2 areas where we're more than exceeded halfway through of our expenses at this point. So legal fees and solid waste barging, we're looking pretty heavy on those. We haven't gone over budget in those departments yet, but to keep in mind, if we do, according to town vote, we can go over by 10%. If we go over by that, we're either gonna have to pull money if there's $14,000 in selectmen's contingency. If we need more than that, we have to have special town meeting to appropriate money. So if we need an additional 10,000 for solid waste barging, or with legal fees, with the way things are going, we're gonna go over budget with that. We might get to a point where if we don't have the selectmen's contingency, we have to have a special town meeting to ask for additional funds. Just something that I want you to be aware of.
Carol?
If I can ask a question about that.
Yes.
On the solid waste barging, I'm a little, so looking at the detail in the budget, it looks as though we're well over on the barging side, but not necessarily, we're about halfway on the hauling side. So I'm curious as to why there's such a differential there. And are we barging more frequently, less quantity, or why is that?
That is true in some sense, a little bit of both. So with the barging, you're taking into consideration, a few different aspects of it. We have been barging more frequently than before because of the fact that we have filled up more often. And so with the, let me give you an example, with the way that the expense is broken down with the 32 account, hold on. Here, we have funding. Sorry, I just want to be looking at it so I can give you an example, but it looks like I don't even have it in front of me. Well, I just want to put double sided. All right, 32 solid waste. All right, so hauling, landfill, hazardous waste, shipping brush, hauling, all those go under barging. So there's a couple different categories under hauling. So if we're hauling hazardous waste, for hauling 5110, a lot of that is trash. With hazardous waste, the hazardous waste that we haul off gets barged off too, but it goes under hazardous waste. So the type of trash that we haul falls under a couple different categories, but everything under solid waste that gets barged is under one category, which is why those numbers seem like they're a little skewed. And the way we get billed, in more of some lumps for, a month or two at a time for trash versus we get billed with Rhino every bulk.
Just a quick question. Have you
I
looked,
don't know if that makes sense. It might be easier to look at some of the bills. If you come in, I can show you some of that.
Yeah, I'll do it.
have you looked at the, are you getting billed for solid waste stuff and it's actually, public works stuff again?
No,
Because you got $3,000, that's it, for the town. Bargaining.
well, salt just got ordered and then we have,
I
fuel and a lot of
understand-
those
I
things
understand,
that
but
we
there should be
haven't
more.
put in.
So, okay, so there's.
A lot of the
information
road
that's not-
materials and salt and things like that, we're just getting now, so we'll be receiving a slew of those bills in the next month or two for public works. No,
Okay.
I've been trying really carefully to make sure that we don't separate those.
It's happened before. but-
Yep. No, I know, absolutely.
All right, any other questions? All right, moving on. Regular business, 22-102, presentation from the facilities committee.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to kind of ask you folks for some feedback based on the meeting that we had and the presentation that the Port City gave us. I know the facilities committee and what we're looking at is long-term, but we also have some short-term needs as noted, or as our charge was given, that we look at the facilities and building committee with a short-term and a long-term approach. So I'm here, there's no presentation. I'm here to ask for some feedback of what you would like to see for information. We do have a meeting coming up. We are talking about open houses. You know that all of our meetings have been open to the public. I'll be upfront with you that I think we all collectively agree with Plan B, knowing that whatever plan it may be, it is the future. And so do perhaps you want some sort of a workshop or something? I feel like tonight I'm a little on the nervous side because you seem to be, there's a lot that you've got to deal with, and I'm here to talk about something that's not going to happen tomorrow, but it is important. And if you have something that you would like to get some more particulars on or understanding, I can take those questions. We also, in looking at the charge, we'll be talking about that in our next meeting, because we're focusing on a plan, but we also understand there is some needs that need attention presently, for example, the town office. So can you give me any feedback now? How would you like to do this?
Bob,
First, just want to say that the notebook and then the subsequent presentation changed my mind on the whole concept. Props to you guys for doing that, doing such a nice job on that. I think we need to move forward. I think it was Plan B, that was the one across the street. Yeah. There are a few things I would ask that we consider adding to it. For example, remote parking. There's quite a bit of parking in there, but remote parking to serve some of the needs that we're faced with these days. And don't know any more about it than that. This question I would have is, do we have any sort of a schedule in mind for construction? And concurrent to that, do we have any sort of funding plan, funding schedule in mind for the project? And I think if we don't, we owe you guys that.
If I may answer that question, we don't have a schedule in mind. There's many of us, especially me, that likes a plan, that likes to look forward, that we look at a budget, that we come up with, maybe we can see this in 5 years, maybe we can see it in 7 years, or maybe we can go after some sort of federal funding and see it sooner. But I think it's very important to align us with you folks so that we aren't marching in one direction and you are marching in another or are unaware that we feel this way. So I really would like to see a workshop, not now, but maybe in a month or two, and particularly have some questions once you have relooked at the presentation by Port City. I think it's important now to give us an idea of what we're looking at, because it's not as soon as possible, but I think it's great that we have a plan to look towards that will be the right plan for a community that have firemen aging, that the weather is different, that maybe we need this structure as far as for emergencies. And
Well, I just want to say, you said we were a plan, but we have agreed this, we're thinking 5-year plan. This can't be a 10-year plan. I don't think we can, I think the potential for fire and rest, well, especially EMS side, we could potentially not be able to sustain what we give now without something. We can go well into that in another meeting.
any comment?
So for the capital side, have we talked at all, or is this part of the budgeting conversation? Do we have bond obligations that are rolling off that would facilitate integrating this construction cost in a fashion that's as unobtrusive as possible on taxpayers as we look down the road? Is that 2 years down the road, do we magically roll off some bond obligation that allows us a logical bonding opportunity for this?
I know we have a cover, I think it's this one.
So in 2028, we're looking at about over $140,000, close to $144,000. Could be more. I have the number, I should have brought it with me today. That will be rolling over. I think one of the reasons that the facility committee is trying to be proactive is also because of the understanding that the stonework is coming down effective. Either way, with the significant infrastructure changes around the island, there are going to be some increases to taxpayers, you know, in the future, inevitably. But there is the understanding that if timing is done right with the large debts falling off, that additional debts could align well enough in accordance to those.
So the other option is, as Beth mentioned, grant federal money. Budget is awash in federal money for all sorts of reasons, good and bad these days, for such projects. And does the committee have anybody on committee who has any experience researching grants? Do we have any resources available to the town who have that skill set?
Port City has
Oh.
allowed that they have seen some grants from other towns, and we need to pick their brains as to who we can seek out. Susan Collins has been giving a lot of money out, in different areas for this type of thing. I will respectfully agree to disagree with Ralph on a 5-year plan, but I think it's wonderful if we can find those funds. Yes, let's have the 5-year plan. I'm saying I don't know as a town as we can put this in because we have other things going.
So as far as the reason for the facility committee to come here, they approached us and they had a presentation Port City did about option A and option B. Option A was to basically fix up what we have now, add 1 or 2 more bays to it, potentially second stories, you know, and so on. And we kind of, the facility committee did not really like that one. There was a lot of questions on that one, engineering wise and stuff. Option B was to do a whole new fire station across the road, North Road. And basically upgrade all, you know, make it right.
Which creates more space for.
Correct, it makes more space for the town office. So the reason for here is to give us a direction, whether you guys want us to go with option B. Tell Port City, we're going with option B. That way we can try to start focusing on the details on that one, and then start focusing on details for the town also. Because the town, there might be some small items like take a wall, cut a door out, do something that we can do now that would increase the room in the town. So we're just looking for a sense of direction before we start talking about moving walls or something like that with Port City. So then,
I think it's important that our town office needs help, needs space, needs, storage, needs private place where they can hold meetings, and it's great to have the plan to help with, what we need in the future, sooner than later of Fordham hearing. But I also want to keep in mind that, we're not going to tell the community that we need the stone pier fixed in 2 years, and we're going to have a whole new fire station and town office in 3. I think it's got to be thought out a little bit better with respect to, the funding and the bonds obligations that will roll off. But it seems to me that some small changes need to happen in the meantime. We just can't sit back and wait for the big humongous thing to take place. So I don't know if Port City's involved in saying, yeah, okay, we can help you design this small space to a little bit of dirt in the meantime. But that's what I would like to see, to have you come back with, this is what's gonna happen, within the year.
that's what we're asking essentially, is this, we don't want to concentrate on going with plan B if you want us to go with plan A. If you want us to go with plan A, then it means moving stuff differently in the town office and the fire station. So that's why we're kind of asking which direction you want us to go.
Right, it sounded like you all were in favor of Plan B, which
We are.
is where I would say, okay, that sounds good. You guys have done your due diligence to figure that out. But in the meantime, figure out what small things can be done to help the town office space.
Okay.
And anything that might be done to help, fire and rescue, if that's even possible.
Rob?
So Beaver and I met and went over some ideas, and I think we got to talk to Port City and see, but
One more agenda item and then we can talk about them. Unless you want to talk about it now.
it's not perfect to talk
I know, I brought it up.
about.
Okay.
Before you-
All right. All right. So those ideas can be brought to facility committee and then brought to us. That way we can budget for whatever we have. All right? Carol?
Yeah, I guess I wanted to understand from them, what the next steps are for the facilities committee. So, say we made a decision tonight, doesn't sound like we are, but what's next on your?
Well, what's next is to put a plan in place, because our feelings are we need to better educate. We've had these open meetings, yet we need to bring the people to say the facilities so they better understand. And also bring them up to date on the need for this rescue.
So you're
Facility.
talking community outreach on the concept.
That's what our plan is. And I think, as Bo said, we just want to put one thing in place that we concentrate on future, that yes, it's Plan B. Now, what are we going to do to better what we have now and work at a time frame and start looking for grants or, the how-tos. But it's important that that we're aligned.
But Port City has completed their task, they're not on.
No, they have not.
No.
They're kind of waiting to see where do you want to go? Because we've said where we want to go. And if we stop and have to reassess Plan A, we're going to spend some money on proving that it isn't the feasible or the right thing to do. Whereas we'd like to move forward with a future of Plan B, because it makes sense. And based on all their experience with other towns of our size and the fact of to retro what we have now for the fire station would be pretty difficult. And
financially, they said it would be at least a wash. It actually could end up costing more to retrofit what we have to meet the codes.
because we're way behind in codes, we just can't.
All right, Bob?
I would just offer a motion that the select board express support for the facilities committee moving forward on Plan B. Give them the input that they're looking for. Let's start looking for grant money and considering all the other options so that we can further develop the plan that they've worked so hard on.
Is there a second? All right, any other comments?
I have one.
All right,
In reference to what Carol asked. To put it in perspective, we spent $9,900 out of the 34,000 that was voted on in the proposal. So there's a lot more work that we have signed on with Port City to do, including designing that final, similar to what like the stone here. Here is your picture, roll with it as you please. That's kind of the idea. And so I think what the board is looking is your suggestion of, do you like us to continue with Plan B? If so, let's focus on that design and have that be the final project and then determine what the next steps are. So.
any other questions? Comments? All right. Okay, we'll go for a vote. All in favor? All abstained?
Thank you very much.
Impartial.
Thank you very much.
All right, Kara?
Yeah,
Ralph?
I just want to say, I don't know if somebody said it, I am concerned about the double whammy of the stone pier and this project. And particularly stone pier, it could be 18 million. That's nowhere near what we have for bonded funds. You know, that's a way different amount of money than what we have bonded, you know, with Cumberland. So I think I think we as a select board kind of need to step back and sort of look at the bigger picture financially, because I think having these two come contemporaneously is what's gonna happen. We need to figure out how we're gonna pay for it.
We
So
appreciate that.
you know, I'm concerned about that part. I'm way more concerned about financing it than the design.
Okay. Ralph?
So are we gonna have a workshop or something with the board of selectmen? I think it's important if you guys kind of up to speed of how we got to where we are and the urgency of this, to, just so you can make a better informed decision, and everybody in the community can make an informed decision, but I think it's pretty important.
So my thoughts are, I'll push it back to you guys to the facility committee, make another meeting, compile information that you want to give us, and then come back to us with that information, and maybe some of the small changes, maybe that you're talking about, you know, doing this, doing that. This is how much approximately it's gonna cost, and they'll do this and whatever. So,
I think it should be noted, those small changes are changes that we're seeing that would be able to stay in the future town hall. It's not like we're gonna do a little retro and then you're gonna have to rip it out. We wanna look at things that, will happen in the future. And, I agree with Ralph that I think somewhere down the line in 2023 springtime, that we could maybe do a workshop so that these questions come out. The concern that Ralph has about the future of the rescue and fire is a big concern.
Eric,
I think that's a great idea. I think that's a facilities committee, public meeting with the community, not necessarily just a select board. So
We have
that's
done
how
that.
I would envision it. I think what we need to know is if there's anything that needs to be included in the fiscal year 24 budget for modifications to the town office, we need that pretty quick. And so that would be my priority in terms of feedback to the selectmen, you know, by the end of the year, you know, preferably or very early in January, if there's anything we feel like we want to try to do in the next budget.
Fair enough.
all right. Any other comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item, 22-103, to discuss the recent theft of road and street signs and take any necessary actions. Mark, I got a text from Mark, and I also got a email from Donna about some stop signs that were missing. I had Public Works go look at it. Vika was having a family emergency, so I had Chuck just drive around and take inventory of what we had. So it's in the other sign that he wrote. So there's a bunch of stop signs that are missing. And I don't know if it was recently or previously. You know, the road signs are missing. Some other signs that are missing. I just need to know what kind of direction you want us to do. Either we go ahead and replace all the signs, and hope, you know, I don't know.
I suggest we replace all the signs and that we make it known publicly by way of posting that we are going to, from that last round of theft forward, prosecute to the fullest extent possible, knowing that it's going to be hard to find people who have done it, but to put the word out that you're wasting taxpayer money. for no valid reason. And that it's incumbent on town administration and the select board to do the right thing. And if we can find who's doing it, sadly, they have to be prosecuted.
Are you saying prosecute them for all the signs that were sold?
For whatever they are found responsible for. There's a process that the sheriff's department has to go through and charges and all that kind of thing. I understand all the emotional reasons why people think we don't have to have signs. I think we're past that. I think we need the signs. That's been decided over and over again, and it's time to stop wasting taxpayer money by stealing the signs in childish fashion.
Carol?
Before I sort of decide on the motion, is there a cost, can you give me a cost for what it's gonna take to replace, and are the signs prioritized in terms of safety concerns? Because it seems like the stop signs you have to do, and, you know, street signs might be less important, but I'd like to know the cost before
So the memo that I provided with this, I went through and contacted the company that we use in Maine to order signs. The signs that were stolen most recent, which was Stonework sign, the stop sign and the little sign, you know, share the road. Speed limit sign for the Historical Society, stop sign at Firehouse and South Road. The South Road Schoolhouse route sign, share the road speed limit sign on the Schoolhouse Road, share the road speed limit sign across Kids Place. 25 miles per hour Cottage Road sign, and a number of posts. Whoever's doing this has started taking the posts, which are even more expensive. The cost of those signs, most recent ones, added up to $950 roughly. So if you are looking to replace those signs, this money, I don't disagree that they should be replaced. This money would have to come out of contingency because there was no money put into street signs last budget process.
And that is all the signs that are missing.
No,
Okay, well, that was my question, okay.
so the list that Chuck gave were the, like this summer, when you guys voted to have us put signs down at Chandler's Beach for no driving beyond this point, within 3 weeks, those signs were taken. The transfer station sign that was put up, the street sign, you know, transfer station road, that was taken, that was put up last spring, that was recently taken. The cost were just the signs that were within that week or two period when I was in the hospital with Evie, where he asked Chuck to figure out. That was just the street sign, the signs that I just listed, that $950 is just for those street signs. So we would need to have, you would have to figure out, you know, do you want to focus on the stop signs and the speed limit signs first or whatever? But without driving and doing this, you know, every single road, every single sign and what is needed, I have no really concept of
So,
that. I just focused on the ones that were missing recently.
so we don't have an inventory of all the signs that are missing. The roads, I'm talking mostly about road signs.
Well, are you looking at the ones that were recently taken, or are you looking at the ones that were taken? when
No,
Justin
all our
Courier
road
put them
signs.
up?
I'm just, I guess what I was trying to understand is, you know, the road signs, just using that as a category. Do we know what, you know, all that are missing, and do we have an estimate to replace those? It doesn't sound like, it
I
sounds
think
like,
what Chuck provided is a very good description of what is missing. I think some would be added to that if you're looking for road name signs from when Justin was here. And the total number of that, I don't have. What I had were just $1,000 cost of the recent ones that were just stolen a week or two ago.
We don't have the numbers you're asking for, but we can get it.
and that includes the posts though that need to be replaced, $1,000?
The posts are $40 a piece, yeah,
And what's in the- Question,
Yes.
what's in the contingency fund?
14,000. We haven't used any of it this year.
My thoughts are, for right now, since we're dipping in our contingency, we don't have anything in our that line budget. is to at least get to the point where we replace the safety signs. So basically, it's stop signs, the speed limit signs, I don't know about the share the road signs, but whatever you guys want to be, but the street signs can wait till the following budget.
And until we have a complete inventory.
Right.
I agree.
But that's my thought. Good.
So I'm gonna be a bad egg here again, and, my feeling is, the same as last year, that, and it's not about, not protecting the community or not, it's just a fact of life that put up the signs, it's, you know, these generations of people, whoever are taking them, it's gonna occur, and it's probably gonna occur again. And we don't have a police, you know, sheriff out here 365 days a year to monitor. You know, I'm not in favor of having Public Works be in charge of putting cameras out to monitor who's taking. I mean, I just, we're a small community. I don't find them necessary. I feel like we live in a society that keeps getting this need to put fear into everybody's psyche instead of just using common sense. And I'm sorry, but I disagree. I don't think we need them, and I think that they're just gonna get stolen again. And I think that's a big waste of taxpayer money.
Rob,
I agree with you, and I think that, I don't really care about the signs, but either way, but I think you put them up, they're gonna get stolen. And like, if we don't have a crop over here, it's just gonna happen. Well, what's the safety concern? I wasn't, what's that about?
just the stop signs and the speed limit signs. That's all.
It was brought up that a lot of accidents might not have occurred if there was a stop sign or if they, and I don't agree with that. I don't think people read signs, and I don't think, I mean, a sign is gonna deter an accident. And I wish it would, I'd have them all over the place, but we're not in a place where we need, you know, streetlights, for instance. It's just, come on, people, use common sense and stop where you stop and be cautious.
Right, Paul?
Given the discussion earlier tonight about the Board of Adjustment Appeals and pending legal matters that may come in front of this town, as well as the budget progress on a line item on legal, okay, this over expenditure ratio across the year, my recommendation would be to save every dime you have in contingency, because I'd hate for this town to call a special town meeting just to pay lawyers. Right? If I had to prioritize the legal position of the town, or the need to gather knowledge on the legal position of the town against street signs, I don't care what street signs.
In looking at the street sign over here, it's it's very easy to take those. I could do it. Because they're,
We know.
but seriously, there's two screws right here. And all you've got to do is unscrew them and pull it out. Are we looking, is there something that we could get other than cement to put it in there? I mean, this is easy. We're not making it hard to get those. I thought literally they were using one of those metal saws that you can,
But
I think this.
the thing is, you shouldn't have to make it hard.
well,
You shouldn't have to make it hard to steal, because they shouldn't be stealing it.
I totally agree,
So,
but we're still gonna be talking about it
Yeah.
year after year, because I don't know, it's just, if we're gonna look at it, From a liability side, I don't know, if somebody pulls out in front of you and we don't have a stop sign there, I'm not sure how that is gonna work with the insurance. However, if we're gonna do this, first of all, you better think about it in the summer, not now. And also look at, is there another type of sign that would be harder to get?
Mark,
I'm not prepared tonight to vote on this anyway.
so my only thing with this is, like the stop signs, we voted to put stop signs at certain spots. And I don't know if that's in writing or exactly how liability wise. So if we vote that we still put the stop sign back in there, but it says in our thing that we said to put one there. Where are we liable? So I don't know that question, that answer, but Bob,
Two things. One, before we vote on this, maybe it makes sense to talk to DOT or other such authorities to ask the question that Beth put. Are there more vandal-proof methods than what we've been using? And secondly, to officially ask council, what is our obligation? And then, once we have those two bits of information, talk about this again.
okay. Fair.
And I would add to that, I agree with Bob, but I would add a full inventory of stop signs, you know, is sort of different levels, I think, of safety related signs. So at least to have a sense, if we're talking 5 stop signs, I might be willing to put those in, but I think I'd like to know what I just don't have a good sense of the signs. And fine to wait until a later date to decide. I think as long as we evaluate it and are in progress, I'm not concerned about the fact that we already made a decision to decide.
Okay, so what I'm here is to table this issue.
So do you want us to do research in the meantime? I mean, are you looking for just stop signs, or are you looking for stop sign and street signs, or are you looking for share of the road signs? Because it's gonna be
Full
difficult.
inventory of all the signs we've had in the
Installed.
past, installed in the past. Secondly, conversation with DOT about vandal-proof methods. And third,
Was the liability.
question to council about the liability.
I'd like to see if there's anything in writing saying
Yeah.
that the board of selectmen wanted or had a stop sign placed somewhere. I can't remember how that, I just can't remember how that was done. I don't know if it's just in the motion or a, can't remember. All right, any other comments on this? So we're tabling this to another meeting, based on the information that we get. All right, next item, 22-104, to discuss the Blanchard lot lease agreement to take any necessary action. So I put this, the Blanchard lot, lease in the packet, because CTC wanted some clarification on where they lie in, as far as in the agreement stuff. Me not being familiar that much with the lease agreement stuff, asked to put it in the packet so we can look at it and then come up, my suggestion would be to come up with 2 people from the board to meet up with the CTC and come up with ideas or suggestions on where to go with this. So whether, I don't know, 2 would be willing to do that. And then, okay. Mark,
I'd like to make a motion that myself and Carol White be assigned to work with CTC on this, as a subgroup.
there's a second? That's seconded by Bob. All right, any discussion? Mark,
like I said, I haven't read this lease in probably 15 or 18 years. And we've been separated from coming almost 15. And it's been nearly 20 since everything took place over there. I don't think it's all that difficult, but I think, as Matt says in his memo, I think the bigger discussions will have to take place with DOT about the actual law and the issues that that's going to have. Who knows when, with probably some storm surge and sea level rise issues.
Eric?
Yeah, and I guess I just want to make sure I'm clear, that's what I understood Matt's priority to be, was sort of the adaptation of that lot because of sea level rise. That he was particularly concerned about. And, you know, the risk to that lot is much more significant than the stone pier in terms of mitigation. So, in terms of timeline, that lot's risky. And I'd be happy to, you know, participate.
Very quickly, if I may, the right of way was not taken by eminent domain by the DOT as ownership. But the right of way cannot be closed off because it is the access to that parking lot. Cumberland paved it. And Yarmouth at one point was told you showed trying to get Yarmouth to force come with a hollow pavement back up. And we talked them out of that. So that pavement is hot top. It needs some work right now, which is easy. And there is a fund that CTC contributes a couple $1,000 a year to. My point being, that's going to have to be redone at some point, resurfaced.
Just wondered, because now they got people from Yarmouth. Yeah,
It's
that
very-
now live on that.
And it's a very limited width. I can't remember the width, but you can, they put the markers right on the one.
All right. So, was that a motion?
Yeah, second.
There was a motion. All right, so all in favor? Moving on, 22-105 to discuss ARPA funds and take any necessary action. I'll hand that off to Vika.
So I put a memo in the packet for this, last year and this year. The town received a little over $18,000, over $36,000 combined in ARPA funds. And ARPA funds are the funds that were provided by the government through COVID reasons. And there's very stringent things that it can and cannot be used for. Lots of municipalities in the state, including, have received millions of dollars where they have improved their public safety buildings and town offices, or they've given ARPA funds for employee bonuses, things like that, but there is a specific requirement. What I'm asking is that you consider using those ARPA funds for improvements to the town office. As we've discussed, new town office or fire department isn't gonna come in the next, 3 years, 5 years. Is, the soonest that we can anticipate. In the meantime, we're completely maxed out. One example is the filing cabinet that I have to hold all the personnel files. That's stuff that I have to keep, but those filing cabinets, it's maxed out. For me to get a bigger filing cabinet to be fireproof and, to code, to follow state regulations, could cost up to $1,000 if we want it fireproof. So little things like that, we need to improve on, but money has to come from somewhere. ARPA funds, it has come up in the past through agenda items about possibly putting it towards affordable housing or broadband or something like that. We could put it towards broadband, we have a big grant out, we have lots of funding. So I would like to see these funds to be used to improve the town office outside of taxpayers' expenses to get us through the next couple of years. Possibly work with the architects that are gonna help us design the future building, with the understanding of the minor changes that we need to do now, work with the fire department to see how we can, improve, expanding the building a little, expanding some space, so. Very, very early stages of discussions, but kind of leading off the discussion we had earlier on, we have $36,000 that is not going to impact taxpayers' money, that is grant that was received by the government, that would be perfect use of money for something like this.
Is there a certain time limit of when it can be used or should be used?
It's, the time limit is within, a couple of years, and so with this particular thing is as we start, going into the funds and using them, I'm required to submit reports to the state, so they're aware of all of the expenditures, so. And I did check with legal, us using the funds for the improvements of, a town office, does fall under the, government services that would be provided, so. it would be-
Bonus.
Two things. One, I would like to, before we make any decisions on this, see the actual list of what ARPA funds can be used for, so that we can factor that into the decision. And two, a list of the needs that you've identified for the town office as short-term improvements that would be consistent with and implemented into the further changes that are made in the your plan, 2-year plan, 10-year plan, whatever the plan is. But a list of specifics, and file cabinet sounds like a good item, that you could list out what items are and some sort of budgetary number for those items. That would be helpful. So we can look at what they can be used for, what you're talking about, and then we can talk about as a board, what other, like, can they be used for legal expenses? We're gonna need some. Can they be used for road signs?
No.
Again, I'd like to see the list. Yes.
Art?
I don't have any problem considering directing this money for use for improvements to the town office or the public safety building or both. But I am wondering about, I know that you're running temporary air conditioning units. One of them's broken probably now. And I'm wondering if mini splits might be part of this improvement, short-term and long-term, because even if we buy, let's just say 2 units, I don't know what it would take to cool and partially heat at times that space. But I think that would make sense, to take a glance at.
Well, and that's kind of why I'm bringing all this up, because if we have some of these funds and we already have an architect that's working with us who would be designing a future, knowing the whole construction of the building and what it needs and
Yeah.
how it's maxed out on electricity right now, things like that, all of that would be considered in one sum.
Forgot about that.
And you're right, our window AC unit broke this year. It has not been taken out because then we have to pay somebody to cover the hole. So I brought my own personal AC so we can use it, and it barely covers the little room. So
Yeah.
there are things that need to be changed.
Thank you for reminding me about the lack of
Yeah.
good electrical service.
Carol?
Yeah, and I brought this up at a previous meeting, but the state has a pretty generous grant program for municipal energy upgrades for the buildings. And I really would like us to seriously look at what the options are. And it includes electrical upgrades if those are necessary to install other equipment. And so I think the program continues maybe through the year, but we don't have tons of time if we're gonna actually apply for it. So I know a number of towns have used it. So I think as part of this whole initiative, just to add something else to be displayed, but if we're looking at, improvements to the municipal building, then we should be looking at the energy upgrades, particularly because they are significantly subsidized by the state. So I think if you do both of them, it's lighting, Bob's got it popped up here, lighting, energy, electrical. So I think we can look at the whole
HVAC, on-demand water heater, it's the full. It's every way you could possibly make a building more efficient, and they're trying to give them over that. We should be asking for that now. Separate but related to your question.
So I would not pursue it if our electrical system is not adequate, maybe we should upgrade that now so that we can take advantage.
So I've been hearing a lot about grants tonight. We don't really have anybody that really researches grants for a specific purpose or something like that. I don't know if there is anybody that does that or.
There's somebody at the school and so. But I mean, this is something the state has notified every single community about. I mean, I think we need to be that much on the ball that we, you know, investigate and respond to those things. And I think it's something we, you know, perhaps the facilities committee could help, you know, the town office look into, just like we did on climate resiliency. I mean, I don't think we need to hire outside expertise at this stage of the game, personally.
I would also consider asking either both Maine Municipal and also GP-COG if they have help available for researching such grant opportunities. Another thought.
All right.
Where are we at on that? Oh, sorry, someone had a question.
I just would, I think this is so important as far as looking at this. I would like to volunteer to be part of this and do research and call and I'll need, you know, I'd like some guidance in it, but I think it's really important for the town office. I mean, that's a wonderful opportunity, but I hope we don't lose sight of the necessity that we have now with a place for privacy and an office perhaps in the back. I mean, I've talked with Mark about this before, and as Ralph has reminded me, this has been going on since Eric, whatever his name was. So I really want to see things better for them, and I do have an air conditioner that I will donate. So I also next summer, but I really think we can't just keep talking about it. So I'd be happy to do some research with some guidance.
So correct me if I'm wrong, at this point, where the ARPA funds stand, essentially just push it back to Vika to give us some information on what she needs, approximate budget on how much that would cost. And as far as getting us what we can actually spend the ARPA money on, what the town can spend it on, and then possibly look into facility committee.
Well, I mean, Beth is offering to do it, so whatever, I just think, I understand the space needs, but I just think, I think somebody should be looking into this.
So have the needs, because we'd have to call, like, just throw Blue River out there as the heat pump installers. They would come out and bring in electrical, an electrician to come out to look at, to see if it's adequate. And if it's not adequate, then we can look for the grant to go for the power to upgrade, you know, so we gotta start somewhere to bounce stuff around, so.
Can I volunteer to help Beth get started?
Yeah. All right.
Don't we already,
Oh, well,
don't we already have a rough number for the 400 amp service, Beth? Did we ever get a rough number?
Yes, it's somewhere in our
Okay.
notes that can help me. Yes,
Yeah.
the answer is yes.
Yeah.
All right, any other discussion? You know what you need?
Yeah, this will be the first topic of discussion for the next meeting, because this is something I want to talk about.
All right, moving on, 22-106 to discuss the Indian Point Resiliency Assessment from Marty Baker. So I'm not looking to spend too much time on this.
I can make it very quick for you.
Just want, please,
I got it all.
are you done?
He, as of today, sent us the files sent us the bill, sent us everything that we've been looking for. The Indian Island has had a chance to go in and look at it. I have not, but we, to my knowledge, I'll dig into it more tomorrow, but we have a slew of files that has come our way. So.
Bob?
They need to be the right files. We've been down this road before. A slew of files doesn't quite get us there. They need to be the specific files that we were looking for. They need to be opened up on a computer that has the right application, which I don't have, but can open up a DWG file to see if the survey information that we need is there. So I would suggest we postpone this until we get a chance to look at what was sent.
Okay. Aaron?
Yeah, I would offer to look at the spatial files and see if it's in a format we can use. Hopefully it is. And if not, if I would have permission to contact Barney to get what we need, I would suggest we don't pay the bill until we make sure we have everything. Is that reasonable?
We do have to figure out the split of the cost with Indian Island anyway, so that bill's not gonna get paid for at least a couple more weeks at that, so.
So does the rest of the board agree with either having Carol and or Bob contact Arnie Baker to get the proper
Oh,
files?
I do think we have the right ones. But
right, so I will just
I'm just
review those and.
being honest, I have not opened anything because it's been a busy day, so.
Yeah, you probably won't be able to open.
I wasn't able.
It's files that only Carol of this board would have on the computer to be able to open. The DWG file is a very specific file. So I'm fine with her doing that.
How about the rest of the board?
Anything that will speed and finish this up.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, I'm fine with it then.
I just was curious to, so once we have these files, these magical files, what next? What does that give us?
We have information for the hook and then our contract with Arnie Baker.
And the reason we've been asking for these files is I think they could be very useful for the work that Bob and Bo are doing with Indian Island in terms of, evaluating options.
If they are what we think they should be, then we don't have to spend money to get somebody else to produce that data.
It's data that we will need to go forward with whatever's being proposed by.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, good. Moving on to communications. Any communications?
Most of them I mentioned in the TA report, and then you did mention the communication from Donna Damon about the street signs. Other than that, I think I have everything covered.
All right.
Well, I think I should mention,
Yeah.
it's sort of my communication, but with Vika's, I checked with Vika first, but we had an opportunity to apply for a AmeriCorps fellow through GP-COG to the tune of $2,400 for 9 months of 40-hour work. So it seemed like a no-brainer to, so similar to an island fellow, but an AmeriCorps fellow. GP-COG does all the management of the fellows, but they could help us with this climate resiliency thing. They could help us with broadband. They can help us with some of these other questions, including ordinances and other things. So basically, it's somebody that GP-COG helps manage. We would work with them. So Vika and I agreed to submit an application, which I did, I don't know, like a week ago, and we'll hear next month. But if that is, so the money, I think, could come out of the climate resiliency funding that we received. So it seemed like just too good an opportunity to pass up, but because the deadline was around Thanksgiving, I just didn't want to wait. So I hope that's okay. We can always refuse it if we decide not to do it. But we did send that.
Mark?
If it came through, would we have to help with housing or?
Nope, so that's the damages. They basically are, they're on their own for housing, but GPCOG tries to help them. They can be mostly housed at GPCOG, but would come over as needed. We would have to pay the transportation costs, but they don't need workspace here either. And so I talked with the director of GPCOG, and it seemed like it was worth pursuing, because it sounds like we need help on a lot of different, I mean, it could be a lot of different grants, you know, there's a lot of things we could use them for. So I just, for $2,400, it seemed like.
Thank you.
Bob?
And I think one capability they would bring to the table is something we've been lacking for a long time, and that's planning. Planning board cannot do planning activities as a planner, as a town planner can. The only person I think in town who has legal authority to do planning kind of work is Vika. And not one more thing we need to dump on Vika's plate. So a way to sort of dip our toes into questions, for example, evaluating this proposal that supposedly the hotel is bringing to the table. That evaluation would be done by a planning person, and this person theoretically would have that skill set. So I'm absolutely for it. In addition to the other kind of duties that Carol referred to.
All right, any other comments on that? All right, any other communications? I got one from Steve Moriarty. He just got sworn in as our next state representative. He sent me an email saying he's looking forward to representing the town again. And congratulated us on the Resiliency Partnership Community Action Grant. Yeah, he says to reach out to him anytime. For the holidays. Yes.
Is the letter that came from Jim Butler this afternoon, is that considered communication or is that different?
I didn't even have a chance to open it, where I wasn't able to open it, so.
I did, I mentioned it when the, yes, that is a communication, but I did mention that in the appeal of, 107 Cottage, that our code enforcement was one of the ones that submitted a memo this afternoon, requesting Board of Adjustment and Appeals to reconsider their decision.
Did you want us to read the letter, or?
Is it a public record item will be posted as part of the file?
It is public record, yeah, I don't, have a copy of it printed
I do.
because,
You want me to read it? Will it be posted on the website so that people have access to it? We don't really post our,
If it's a communication,
it can be,
it can be.
yeah.
I'm just trying to fit it into how we keep packets of information regarding permit packages and that kind of thing, but. Can we read it?
Go ahead.
To Board of Adjustment Appeals, copy to Vika, Town Administrator, from Jim Butler, Code Officer, date 12/7/2022. Request of Board and Adjustment and Appeals to reconsider their decision. You are hereby notified that I am officially requesting that the Board of Adjustment and Appeals reconsider their decision pertaining to the BOAA appeal permit NP 22-SC-2 located at 107 Cottage Road, Town of Shabig Island, tax map I-03, lot 14, 103.115. This decision was made on December 1, 2022. Under Maine State Statute Title 30A, Section 2691, Section 3F, the board may reconsider any decision reached under this decision within 45 days of its prior decision. A request to the board to reconsider a decision must be filed within 10 days of the decision that is to be reconsidered. A vote to reconsider and the action taken on that reconsideration must occur and be completed within 45 days of the date of the vote on the original decision. The board may conduct additional hearings and receive additional evidence and testimony as provided in this subsection. There are many items that the board asked for, including legal opinion on the shoreline zoning ordinance, questions of the property owner, questions for the appellant's legal counsel, and additional questions of the code enforcement officer. The board did not allow for any of those things to take place, and in which I believe the decision was made prematurely and inaccurately. Additionally, the findings of fact had been pre-prepared and rehearsed. Additional testimony and facts need to be heard by the board to allow for a fair and accurate decision. Respectfully, James Butler, Code Officer, Tom Shruda.
Thank you.
Good.
All right, any other communications? Moving on, to approve minutes from November 2nd, 2022.
So moved.
All right, any comments? All right, all in favor? All right, next item to be placed on a future agenda. So dredging, PW trucks, facility committee workshop, sorry, street signs, and then transfer station, which I wanted to briefly talk. We talked briefly a few months ago about transfer station, looking at it as a whole. I went back and the notes that I wrote, and all I could find was, I believe it was you, Mark, that said to look at the facility, holistic look at the entire property, as far as traffic flow, capacity, function, future needs, possible expansion, and the wood chip area and the wood chip dump solutions. So I didn't know if you guys had any more ideas that you wanted to put as a charge. Mark?
Well, my thinking when I said that was, I thought we were gonna talk about the existing makeup of your committee and whether that committee was appropriate for looking at in a big picture or not, and whether we needed to form a holding committee with a different, larger charge. That's what I was thinking.
So I couldn't find anywhere where we had the transfer committee actually had a charge. Yeah, I think it was just like, okay, you guys are a committee now, fix it. We never had actually a
So
committee.
you guys were just evaluating the fees and the structure of the disposal.
Correct, yeah, so we were never actually a committee.
Well, that's
It was
fine.
just a
But there may be people in this community that have passion for solid waste, if you will. Up there. I bet there are some people out there that would participate if we put the word out. And I think we're starting to outgrow our system if we haven't already. And that there can be some improvements up there, and they may be because we have our hand forced but budget, capacity of waste. And, Cumberland set that facility up a long time ago.
I would add that now that Mark triggered that thought, several surrounding towns have recently dramatically changed their policies regarding solid waste and have gone to things like paper bag and recycling is free, but any trash bags you got to pay for. Not saying we should do any or none of that, but we ought to at least look at what other towns have taken, what steps they've taken to deal with similar issues. So that'd be one thing. And then the whole wood chip thing, I think we need to figure out a way to turn that into an asset.
So I know it's a big deal to form yet another group. But, it's gonna take some going to other towns and talking to how people are handling this stuff. And granted, we're a separated community that has barging across the water problem. But maybe some of that can be solved by talking with Long Island.
So, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I think given the escalation of our solid waste costs, we should, take a serious look at the facility and maybe the pricing structure and what other towns. So I don't know if there's anybody out there that could, kind of provide a workshop on solid waste. Maybe the DEP does, I don't know. It might be good to have a group of people get informed kind of about what, instead of, running around to different towns trying to figure it out. I suspect there are some people with expertise. It might be GPCOG, it might be the DEP that could kind of give us the lowdown on right, that was a solid waste report, which we pretty bad.
Things seem to have changed there the last couple of years. I had bad experience with them 5 years ago. I think they may be cleaning up the.
So I think, so I'd like to work on getting a charge drawn up.
Yep.
To make a proper committee. So I was gonna just put it down out there as to look at it as the entire property with traffic flow, safety, safety, I guess. Capacity functions, future needs, wood dump, fees, policy, ordinances, if we need to do that during so that would be in their charge already. Anything else you guys can think of?
Well, I guess, is it a solid waste committee or a transfer station committee? Because I kind of think the whole solid waste issue is what needs to be addressed, and including the transfer station.
I think it's like the whole.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I know, so
I would call it solid waste and recycling committee.
solid waste. Committee
And recycling.
and recycling.
And then I won't waste much more time if I may. So short term, I understand how barging costs are going up, and a lot of that is we're asking them to come get stuff more, I guess, with their barge. And they've also had a price increase, so I'm gonna say 15% in the last year. So that's not surprising. But I would hope that in the short term, that we're taking a hard look at how and what we're accepting up there and what bins it's going into, and if it's proper. In other words, are commercial people going up there somehow and filling up our municipal solid waste compactors with something that should not be going in there, like tires and tarps and boat covers and construction waste that people aren't paying attention to, because that it can really add up quickly. So I just want to make sure that we're paying as much attention as we can to how it's operating, even short term.
All right, thank you very much. I'll work on that.
So a few other agenda items.
Yeah.
I think we talked about adding a discussion on a future agenda, the removal of the war policy. The seasonal war policy.
Yes.
Still more seasonal policy. So it needs to be on there. And then I would like to add a discussion of our policy regarding the town attorney. I would like to be copied on more of the correspondence. I think at one point we had a practice of kind of managing how much time we spent with the town attorney. If that fee is going over budget, I think we have to talk about how that works. Okay. If it's all via email, it'd be pretty easy to copy the select board. I know nobody likes to receive more emails, but on balance, I'd rather know what's going on in those conversations. So I'd like to add that via the agenda and talk about it in the future.
Carol?
Well, Mark, if it's on legal, keep going, because I have another specific one.
Just very quickly on legal, I'd like to have a candid conversation of who our law firm is. I personally miss Brandon Isaacson. We started the town with Brandon Isaacson, and Peter Lowe was our main contact from Brandon Isaacson. And I thought that he and that law firm were outstanding for the years that we had them. So I'm sorry, but I'd like to consider some sort of discussion sometime.
All right. Carol?
Yeah, just to add to that, I think when Margaret came on board, she switched because it was her preference, this other firm. So I think that's something we should discuss. So the other thing is Long Island. Beacon and I met with Long Island, and people reported on that a few meetings back, but they did suggest a joint select board meeting between their selectmen and our selectmen. And since, I don't know if it could affect any budget related items, but I think we should try to do that sooner rather than later, just to see what common issues we might work on. One of them being, they were exploring the option, purchasing a barge. And so I don't know what they meant by that, and they didn't really elaborate, but I think we should meet with them maybe right after the beginning of the year and try to follow through on that. They have a lot of the same challenges we do. So I think there's a lot of benefit to talk. they operate on a much tighter budget than we do, like somehow they manage a lot less money.
Pretty lean,
Anything else?
Do we have an ongoing list of such items, of future agenda items? Is there a list somewhere on the town website? Probably
Well,
not.
I think both keep it.
No, we're just pretty much using a list. She's got a list and we've been actually pretty well going through the list that we.
Well, I added, there's one that I added a couple months ago that haven't heard mention of. That was a discussion of potential town, use of town land for affordable housing on a home ownership.
I didn't want to talk about that. That's why I was-
I'm sure it's on the list still somewhere. Shuffle off, shuffle off.
Is there a priority for what should be on the next agenda? I mean, Bo usually,
We
we
usually
make
bounce
up the
around.
agenda off of these
So-
lists and then we send it to Bo, he approves it and then
So I think that.
forward, so.
So I think that agenda, depending on where we stand on the 13th or 14th, so that'll determine whether we put some time on that one. So, just so you know. The other thing that I was talked to you about, oh, I'm sorry, Jay, go ahead first.
No, keep going. You're
All
on a
right.
roll.
So, communication. I don't know if there's any policy as far as communication, as far as what we are. Like Carol pointed out today, and then I was having a slight issue with it also. The communications that we were having with the wharf, the floats, I mean, communications we were having about, anything that has to do with town. Okay, where do we stand as far as communication, as far as that? Because at a certain point, either there was a quasi decision made to leave the float center. But our policy states they come out,
But we can make decisions anytime.
not on email.
There is a communication policy.
Right.
That was adopted in
2013,
2013.
Okay.
and it's not very good.
And I didn't see it.
But if I can finish,
Okay.
anytime all five of us are on an email conversation,
Yeah.
that's an official meeting. We can make decisions. They
Yes,
should be
but-
posted.
It-
That's it.
Official meetings need to be posted with a 3-day notice, and
Yeah.
that's.
Correct.
And little communications like that really aren't a big deal in the greater schemes until you go into the legal aspects of it, and then it could potentially, so it's just always a good practice to try to, and I think where Bo's coming from is, if we have this public meeting, there will be less decisions being made through emails and more of them coming to agenda items, and right now, we're really coming to that point where there's really a lot happening at the same time, and it's hard to prioritize because everybody wants to have that decision be the top, and
So the only
There's-
decision that we've made via email is that one regarding the floats.
Yeah.
And that was a time-sensitive issue because of the plan to do them December 1st. I apologize for not picking up on the fact that 3 meetings ago, we said, they're gonna come out December 1st. But as soon as the public weighs in a major way on something that's timely, I think we need to respond. I don't think we need to say to the public, well, our next meeting is not for a week and a half, so we really can't help you with that issue. And this is the only time we've made a decision being.
I understand that, but what I'm getting to is, we need to be clear on how we communicate, whether it's via email, via text, via phone call, via in person. We have to be, it's either review the communication policy that we have in hand and either rewrite it or, because I didn't know we had one, very honestly.
Neither did I.
So
Love to see it.
I'd like to see it also. So it's either revise it or we need to be clear before the town gets in trouble for something.
Yeah. Well, to take that a step further, there really ought to be a handbook that's given to every new select board member most boards have a handbook of policies and expectations and conflict of interest and all that stuff. Haven't seen anything like that, but, and if you didn't know there was a communication policy and there is one, we all need that.
Okay, you're certainly not supposed to deliberate at all proper. I understand we made a decision. What we really did was ask to wait for the
Yeah.
meeting to discuss it.
Which
I
really,
think
really
this is an
well.
agenda item.
So Carol,
Yeah, I guess I feel like it was appropriate in that case on the stone wall to delay the decision to the board meeting to give us some time to discuss it. I have no problem with that. I think my concerns relate more to just communications in general, and if we have a question, am I supposed to call Bo, or am I supposed to communicate with the whole board? Am I supposed to call Vika? And if I call Vika, am I supposed to communicate with everybody? I'm just not clear on what the process is, and I think, the way the board has operated historically hasn't necessarily been the best way. So I think we can devise our own policy. The other area that I'm very concerned about is the legal conversations, because it sounds like there's an awful lot of those happening. And I am seriously concerned that we as the select board don't know what the substance of those are. It's not that I don't trust Vika and the code enforcement officer, but it's those are important conversations that we don't seem to have information on. In my experience, at least according to her, when he was a selectman, they didn't have any, the town administrator did not talk to the attorney without first talking to the board and getting permission, and it was a very rare occasion. It sounds like we're having a lot more communication, hence, higher expenses, so I think it's both got a financial implication, but also I think it's particularly given, I don't exactly know where everything stands on these land use related issues, but I feel like I should, as a select board member, have a better handle on all these conversations and decisions and advice that the attorney has given the town, but I don't know what it is. So.
all right, so I think we need to put it as a future agenda item. Communication policy and communication in a whole. Where do we stand and how do we do it? And then either put it in writing. And like Bob said, I think that would be a good part of communication, would be to have a folder with the do's and don'ts as being the selectmen. This is how we do it here, and basically, go from there.
So my recommendation would be, right now, if you do have questions with some of those things, if you go under the town website, under town documents, there's a section where there's ordinances and there's a section where there's policies. There's a list of all these policies that selectmen can change, and there is a ton of them, and that's been a major complaint from a lot of people over the years, is that for a small community, there is a lot of ordinances, a lot of policies, a lot of rules and regulations that are expected to be kept track of by a board and a small number of employees. So I don't disagree that we should revisit a lot of them, especially since we're continuing to come up to this where, the town's trying to follow a policy, the selectmen aren't aware that there is, or don't agree that it should be followed. So I think that a good place would be to start is to look over those to see what we really have. I also have a binder that Marjorie organized years ago, a list of all of them and them being changed over the years. Look through those and make a list of the ones that the board wants to change.
and that's all well and good. But until you just said there was a section on the town website with all the policies listed, I had no idea there was a section on the town website where the policies are listed. And I'm on the town website all the time. My point that new board members should be given not just the training that we all have to go through with municipal, there should also be a handbook, a manual that tells you this is what you need to do. This is what the communication policy is. Or simply have a page that says you need to memorize the 18 policies that are on this particular page on the town website. Whatever it is, we shouldn't just have new select board members come onto the board, hit the ground running with no training, no instruction. There needs to be something more than that.
Jen,
So I think that, who went to the elected officials workshop? Okay. So there was a lot of information on that. And I think that any questions, call up MMA. There's a huge amount of information there. And it sounds really awesome to have like a manual and everything, but who's putting that together right now? Because she's not.
I'm not
And
on
I,
it. Sorry.
unfortunately, we don't have the staff to do it. I know that when started the school board, when you're a new school board member, you got a big thick binder.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe that went by the wayside and everything, is digital, or maybe, maybe the new thing is to just go and go to a class. I'm not sure. Maybe that's why they make you have, do it once a year or whatever. But I don't know, other than just talking amongst ourselves and saying, hey, check out this leave policies. Did you know this was here? So that we're as informed as we can be.
I agree with what you said. But
All right,
ask,
so-
maybe it's the question, you gotta know what questions to ask.
Yeah,
All right, let's move ahead here. So is there any other agenda items?
Don't
Carol?
RFQs.
Well, this is a future agenda item, but if Jen kind of jogged my memory, because when we went to this training fairly recently, I would like to have a discussion at some point, and maybe this is a workshop about how we operate that's separate from a select board meeting about all of these things. But about records and kind of, we had the whole FOIA training, and I am concerned that we are not meeting those requirements. And so I would like, to have a discussion about, and also ways to have more cost efficient record keeping so that, and make it things accessible digitally. I definitely heard the code, repeatedly that, for example, when a public community member requested a file, it wasn't in the office, and, one person had it outside of the office. I think that's a really bad policy. So I think at some point we should dedicate some time, based on the training we had, to discussing sort of, public access to records, because they went through the whole FOIA thing, and I don't think we're meeting the grade on that. So
Okay.
it's not something I think we should do in a select board meeting. I think we should have a separate workshop on kind of how we operate. And maybe we want to have it, run by somebody other than us. Marjorie, I don't know.
All right. So, that was right. All right. Anything else? Jen,
stone here.
Stonewall
The
RFQ?
RFQs, yeah, the
All right.
deadline sent
Yeah.
in.
Have you had anything? Probably nothing. You got one. Okay. Do you want
All
to
right.
get?
All right, anything else? All right,
Make a
moving
motion,
on. Go ahead, Mark.
make a motion to move into executive session pursuant to MRSA 4056C, real estate.
I'll second that.
Second, all in favor?
Okay, yes, all in favor? Yeah. This is gonna be quick anyway. Nothing.
Might be quick, but this is what everyone legal gave us for answer.
Oh, for.
I just got it. I have not had,